You're gonna be happy at Shoppers Drug Mart. Shoppers Drug Mart. ICTU, we're coming through for you.
Good morning. If you were to ask me about the bus strike as it stands this morning, I would tell you that in my honest opinion that the only way the buses will get back to work is if the legislature gets into session and orders the drivers back to work regardless of the inherent injustices in the government's position. Said he crisply and brightly this morning as he is about to introduce on this key day in this tortuous bus strike Colin Kelly, President Local 1 of the Independent Canadian Transit Union, and Gerry Krantz, President Local 2 of the same union, as their members are about to vote in Vancouver and Victoria on the recommendations by Joe Morris, former head of the CLC, who was appointed by Social Credit to do this Industrial Inquiry Commission. Down to the bad news and some of the detail of the bad news, whichever side of the fence you're on, after the break. We're now in the 13th week of the crippling, bad for business, bad for people, strike come lockout, this bitter battle between the government agency and the ICTU. The long-awaited Joe Morris report has appeared. It doesn't really settle much from the union point of view. First of all, money. He's suggesting a 4-year contract, 2%, 3%, 3%, 4%, cumulative about 12.5% on the current wages, which would take the government safely through without the prospect of a strike until after Expo 86 is over. Let me first of all put the money question to you, gentlemen, on Morris's non-binding recommendations. Is the money now still a stumbling block, Colin Kelly?
Money never been a stumbling block, and the money is acceptable as far as we're concerned. If that money was there without all of the other things, we would be recommending it.
You can live with 12.5% cumulative over 4 years.
Yes, we can.
So that's out of the way.
It's out of the picture.
Well, why should that not settle the whole thing right now, gentlemen, as you give me the other recommendations in the Morris inquiry?
Because the transit system has been shut down for 13 weeks, and it's been shut down not because of the demands that we were making, but because of the demands that the company was making for part-time operators, for the elimination of our working practices clause, for the reasons that they wouldn't give us an exemption to Bill 3.
All right. What does Morris recommend about part-time operators in his inquiry?
He recommends that it go to a committee between the company and the union, and if there's no resolution by the time July 1st rolls around next year, 10 months from now, that it go to binding arbitration, the arbitrator to be chosen by the government.
Is that acceptable to you in its present form?
No, it just can't. Why can't we, at least if it has to go to arbitration, why can't we choose who the arbitrator is going to be between the parties?
Well, normally each side will put up a name, and then if you can't agree, the government would appoint one.
Yes, that's correct. And that would normally be the way in an industrial inquiry as well.
So therefore,
but that process didn't take place.
To settle the part-time part-time operators recommendation of Morris, all you need is input in the selection of the arbitrator.
That's correct.
So that's not an insuperable stumbling block, is it?
Doesn't seem to be.
All right, what's the next one?
The next one would be the working practices clause. And our understanding is, in a conversation that we had with Joe Morris last night, who was in Ottawa, he has indicated to us that it wasn't his intention to eliminate the consultative process, which he has done in his proposals, and that he is going to be providing some clarification on that issue by Friday.
Now, you're confusing me. Give me what Morris recommends about working practices in his report without any fuzzy phone calls from Joe in the East, between you and Joe, equally fuzzy, perhaps.
Okay. What he's eliminated is the clause which provides that any new working conditions must be agreed to by the union. Now,
he's taken that out.
He's
In other
taken
words,
that out.
He's given all control of working conditions to what you might call management rights.
Right.
Totally to the company.
That's right. And even though, and regardless of the impact any new working condition might have on the employees, we don't even have the ability to grieve it or take it to arbitration.
Are there not many industries where management has total right as to how it runs its operation?
Not very many. This is the 20th century. Consultation between employees and employers is a natural progression of things.
So Joe Morris, former president of the CLC, has taken you back into the 19th century by recommending, I'm talking about the report, I'm not talking about phone calls, by saying MTOC, the bus operators, will have total right to decide working conditions without consultation with the union.
That's exactly right.
And are you going to go for that in any way, shape, or form?
That's entirely unacceptable.
No, you say.
No,
No,
absolutely no.
no.
Yes, that's right. No.
And you don't accept my thesis that some unions are living under that kind of management right clause right now in free enterprise.
I don't think that there's very many that we're aware of. Certainly not in the public sector.
Does that working practices provision, which he has put in bluntly in the management's hands, does that foul you up on this complicated sign-up kerfuffle we're always hearing about when you sign up and seniority for your jobs?
No, the seniority issue or the sign-up under seniority has never been a problem. That was a tactic that we used during our unstrike. It doesn't have anything to do with how things would unfold during a normal
if you were
collective
going
agreement.
back if everything else was agreed, you would let the company allocate the shifts to the workers.
In the same manner that they've always done, absolutely.
But isn't that one of the big sore points?
No, it's never been an item on the table. That was the
But
the
it is
idea.
a sore point. You know
It's not a sore
point.
point. It's not a
Sore point with them.
It is with them, but it's they schedule the work. We just sign it. We refuse to sign it as part of our unstrike tactic.
So that's not a problem.
The company then tried to turn that
accept
into
it.
an issue.
Now, what about the other point? With money, you'll accept. Part-time operators' recommendation you'd accept with a slightly easier clause on the selection of the arbitrator.
Yes.
But when it comes to working conditions, you say no 1,000 times no. You want to be consulted on working conditions.
Absolutely.
Does that include layoffs?
No, the layoffs is another issue.
That's our request for an exemption to Bill 3. And what Joe Morris has done is he's taken the language out of Bill 3, language which Metro Transit proposed, and put it down as part of our proposed collective agreement language. Now, we recognize that the company should have the right, if there's legitimate reasons, to lay people off.
Like no money.
Well, for
See,
instance, not in this case.
Don't let's get confused here. They put Bill 3 language into his recommendations, and that Bill 3 language simply says ability to pay. If we don't have the money, we can do what the hell we like with service.
No,
Isn't that
that's
right?
wrong. That's wrong. What it says is that they should have the ability to lay people off if there's slackness of work, if there's organizational change, or there's budgetary restrictions.
That's what I said.
Now, we don't agree with the budgetary restrictions part of it because Metro Transit doesn't have any of its own money. The budget is completely controlled by an outside agency.
But that's where you lose me.
Well, then let me explain it to you.
No, the government puts the money out for transit.
If Metro Transit had a budgetary shortfall, it would manifest itself in a reduction of service, which would mean that there would be a slackness of work. Now, we've agreed that slackness of work is justifiable for layoffs. But in the case of Metro Transit, with this particular company, budgetary restrictions is not a legitimate reason to lay people off because
It's redundant.
it's
Why
redundant.
not?
It's redundant on BC Transit dictates the level of service.
Right.
Okay. Now, if they dictate that because of their budget restrictions, they can only provide a certain amount of service, which is less than the service that they presently provide, then they're going to have to lay people off.
Right.
So, whatever service they demand of that MTOC put out, that's the money that they provide to MTOC.
Correct.
So, the work that's available to be covered is automatically covered by the amount of money that they allocate.
No, I think you're being short-sighted. I say if Bill Bennett says to somebody down the line, cut the cost of transit, they don't have the money to do anything other, do they?
Look,
But
that would be fine.
the automatic result of that is a reduction in the level of service that they can afford to
But
pay
you
for.
told me that they have no budgetary restrictions.
Look, that's
Of course
right.
they
Now
do.
look at. If the government were giving the money directly to Metro Transit, then they might have an argument on that. But what happens is the money that Metro Transit receives, and it doesn't actually receive it, it merely gets its bills paid. At any rate, it comes from BC Transit. Now, this clause might be appropriate if we had a contract with BC Transit, because they do have money and they do have budgetary
You've
control.
lost me.
Well,
Hold
it's-
your breath. You've lost me. We'll give you the details of the vote and the recommendations after the break. How many men are on strike lockout?
About a little over 2,500.
And they're having a tough time.
some of them are, yes.
When do the votes take place?
Votes today in Victoria at 10:30 and in Vancouver at 11 o'clock at the Italian Cultural Center.
Is this a supervised ballot?
Not a supervised ballot, but it will be a secret ballot.
It will be a secret ballot. It will not be a vote of a show of hands in
No.
any way, shape, or form.
It's, we will put to the membership. The membership has to approve everything that we do in our union. We will ask for a motion to conduct a secret ballot. The membership will decide whether it's a secret ballot or not.
Okay, and your recommendations are already clearly fixed in each of your minds.
Yes.
What is your recommendation?
Our recommendation is not to accept them.
No. You're saying
Yes.
bus drivers should vote no
Yes.
if it goes when it goes to
Vote
the secret
no.
ballot. Your recommendation?
Is no.
No. The life of your union could be on the line, couldn't it?
That's a possibility.
Do you think this government has been trying to smash your union deliberately with malice of forethought?
Absolutely. No
Without
doubt about
question.
it.
Were you not happy with the appointment of Joe Morris, a distinguished Labour leader in this country, former president of the CLC, with all his background in Labour, to handle your problems?
No, we weren't. He didn't have any background in transit. He has been out of the labor field, certainly insofar as labor in BC is concerned, for a long period of time. I mean, that's an indication of that is the 4-year agreement that he proposed. Nobody has a 4-year agreement.
But that would suit the government because it gets them past Expo 86,
Sure,
doesn't
but
it?
it would also indicate that there is a collusion between him and the government and what the government wanted. Look at the language to Bill 3. He didn't even understand, in our conversation to him on the phone last night, he didn't understand that you could get an exemption to Bill 3.
I'm going to come back to your problem in a moment. First of all, I want to ask you to tell me crisply, what confusion did Joe Morris tell you he was suffering from in relation to his reports, which you say he's now prepared to ameliorate?
The first one is under the Working Practices Clause. He said that it was not his intention to eliminate the consultative process that existed when there was an introduction of new working conditions.
So you're saying that he told you he made a mistake in his report?
That's correct. He said that it should be contained in the language. It's inherent in the language that was proposed, but we pointed out to him that that language doesn't exist. And he said, well, it's supposed to be there, that the
And that's the
understanding.
working condition contract you've had in the transit business for how many years?
73 years.
73 years. Is there any other confusion that Joe Morris, that you pointed out to Joe Morris on the telephone to Ottawa?
Layoff and recall. When we explained our position, the union position, during the time of the inquiry, we explained to Joe Morris that we felt that we could live with layoffs if there was slackness of work or organizational change, but we couldn't live with it if there was for budgetary restrictions. And yet in his preamble in the report, he said that the union wants budgetary restrictions considered as one of the 3 points to be considered as the criteria for layoffs. He completely blew it.
Well, you've got me confused too, because I know there's MTOC, I know there's BC Transit, I know there's the Treasury Board, I know there's Bill Bennett, I know there's Norman Spector. And if they decide to cut service and it passes down the line, there's shortage of work.
That's right.
That's right.
Budgetary restrictions.
Well,
That's
look,
right.
let's put it
it's
simply.
inherent in
Yeah,
the
it's
slackness of work.
there.
If I was working for you and you had the money that you were paying me, then you would have a good argument on budgetary restrictions. You would say, if I don't have money, I can't pay
Right,
you.
you're
But if
fired.
you're working for somebody else, you can't come up and say to me that you have budgetary restrictions. And that's what Metro Transit is doing.
Semantics.
It's not semantics. We're
It
being
is
legitimate.
semantics.
If there really is
Okay.
a real budgetary shortfall, there should be slackness
The
of work.
fact remains that you are going to recommend no, and I'd bet you to probably dollars to donuts that you'll get a no vote.
Oh, I don't think there's any question
You'll
about
get
that.
a no vote.
Yes, but
if
we-
only from the pride of the drivers.
But it's important to know that we want to continue negotiating. We want to leave a wide channel open for negotiations. We believe that if we can negotiate with the principals responsible for transit with some government assistance,
Right.
that we can get an agreement here.
Okay, let me give you a very blunt question. How long do you think the public, which knows little of the detail about this, in fact, is going to put up with a government that sits on its hands in Victoria and no buses in its 13th week? How long can the public tolerate an essential service being closed down regardless of the cause?
I don't think there's any question about the fact that this is a vital service. And
Essential service.
And there's so many people who have been waiting for Joe Morris's report in the expectation that it would provide an end to this impasse that we have. And that's why it's so frustrating for us and frustrating for the public that he hasn't accomplished that. And we can certainly sympathize with the public. We do sympathize with the public that they don't have a transit system and they don't seem to have any answers. But if they'll just bear with us a little bit longer, we think that there is the report that Joe Morris has handed down does provide a good set of guidelines for a collective agreement. But we
When
have
is-
to talk a little further.
When is Morris coming back?
On Friday.
On Friday.
Yes.
Has he phoned McClellan? You wouldn't know, I don't suppose, about this so-called confusion.
We suggested
know.
that he do that.
You suggested he phone McClellan.
Yes.
In the meantime, if ordered back to work by the legislature, you will, of course, go back, won't you?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, we're going for a no vote with the hopes of opening up negotiations again. The legislation, back to work legislation, is in the government's court, and they'll have to do what they have to do. We don't advise it because if they legislate the workers back to work, they'll get them back to work, but they won't legislate cooperation. They'll severely damage what is already strained labor relations.
Well,
and we
that-
think we can negotiate a settlement here.
They ordered the pulp workers back to work, and they went back.
That's right, and they're still working at about 25% capacity.
Colin Kelly and Gerry Krantz, ICTU. Phones now, after the break. You're recommending a no vote today, starting in 25 minutes in Victoria, and what time in Vancouver?
11 o'clock.
And you've got how many people out? 20.
2,500.
How many will vote? 1,200?
Probably more than that. I would think about 75%.
Surely you want every guy out to vote
We do.
today.
Absolutely.
We're at the Italian Cultural Center, Grandview in Slocan at 11 a.m.
Okie dokie. I'm pretty depressed about the whole thing. I think it's back to work. Only way out. Unless Joe Moritz appears or McClellan phones Moritz and there is some confusion. The confusion's on the budgetary requirements.
That's one part, yes. And
the other
And
part-
on
Parts
the
on
working practices clause.
Working practices and a little bit in part-time.
Yes.
Go ahead to Mrs. Kelly and Krantz. That's you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say, first of all, that I support the union in their position right now because of what they've said on the air today. But the question that I have is, do they think that the appointment of Joe Morris is a tax by the government to now throw his report back in their faces and into the public's view and say, now we've given you a chance and look, you blew it. Now we're going to hammer you with the legislation.
Hey?
All of the government polls have indicated up till now that the public was unimpressed with the way the government has been handling this whole affair. And we think that your assessment of the situation, that they're going to use Joe Morris's report to make us look unpopular, is probably inaccurate.
See, the money will say, the public will say, money, 12.5% over 4 years. Go ahead, please.
Yes, my concerns in this matter, there's a lot of people out of work, but what really bothers me is that the union can sit there and tell the company who they can hire, who they can fire, why they can fire it, and so forth. If everyone was so darn concerned about everybody else in the way of getting the public on the roads again by the buses, why aren't they back to work?
Okay, good question, I suppose.
Nobody, we can't tell the company who they can hire and who they can fire. And I don't know where he wants to go with that particular question.
Under this contract, can you still grieve any problems you have with the company?
No, under the present one that we have, yes, we can.
Under the new one?
Under the new one, we couldn't grieve the imposition of any new working conditions as proposed by Joe Morris.
You could only grieve individual problems of bus drivers.
Individual problems that are already contained in the collective agreement.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I'd just like to say, first of all, hello to Gerry and Colin, and second, I predict a 90% rejection vote today. A lot of people are hurting, but it's time that we have to stand up and we have to fight for the vital thing, and that is working conditions. It's plain and simple. Working conditions is the only thing that we have with this job, and we have to fight for it.
You are the best paid bus drivers in Canada.
No, that's not true.
Damn close to it.
Look, the compensation for a bus driver in Vancouver on an annual basis, including benefits and wages, is approximately $35,000 a year. That's exactly the same as it is in Montreal. That's exactly the same as it is in Toronto. And Calgary and Edmonton are about 7 cents an hour behind us.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, may I speak to Mr. Kelly, please?
You're on the air. Go straight ahead, please.
Mr. Kelly, what I want to know, is there any chance, any possible way of the bus service coming back? This has been going on now for 13 weeks.
Okay, that's the plea from the public. They don't
Yes.
listen to the details. Some of them just want to know when we're going to get our buses back.
I think that if we could sit down with the company today with some assistance with a mediator, we should be able to iron out the concerns that we have with Joe
So
Morris's
therefore,
report.
Morris has done some good.
Yes, I think that he has done
The
some
money's good.
Yeah, well, the money's fine, and
It's acceptable.
other things have been eliminated.
So he's made a step forward, and you think that the MTOC should now call you and meet you
Yes,
after the vote.
yes.
Mind you, if you only get a 51% vote, you're dead.
No phone calls if we only get 51%.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to welcome your guests they're on. I think they're doing a terrific job. I'm not a union person myself, but I am absolutely disgusted with the way the government is handling this whole thing. Every time there is something where the public is affected by it, the government doesn't even look at it. The bus driving job is not an easy job.
You're with them all the way, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to tell the two gentlemen, I'm an old age pensioner, but I'm with them 100% and tell them to stick to it. The public is not against the drivers, they're against the government that doesn't give a darn about old people or people from Kamloops or anything else. They don't care a hoot about the public.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
ma'am.
please.
Good morning, Jack.
Yeah, speak up a little.
Yes. Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, just two quick comments. First of all, I think that the government, Mr. Bennett and Mr. Morris should sit down with a bottle of Poulet-Fous and discuss this rationally. And second of all, Jack, I think it's a pleasure to hang up on you.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Jack, I got 3 comments. 1, I'm for the bus strike, and 2, I'd like to thank the citizens of Vancouver for being so generous with their rides, and my personal thanks for you for telling off the East during election night. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Anytime. Go ahead, please.
I just have one thing I'd like to say to Colin Kelly. Someone said a moment ago, how much longer can the public put up with this? Tell me, Colin, how much longer can the wives of these drivers put up with this, and how much longer can they wait to get some money to put food on the table and pay their mortgage and utilities?
I don't know. It's of great concern to me. I'm absolutely astounded at the amount of resilience that has been demonstrated by the members and consequently by their spouses. I know that they wouldn't be able to withstand the amount of pressure that they've been under without the support of their spouses, and I know that they
You
appreciate
two
that.
haven't been on wages at all, have you?
No.
You're both the same as the others.
Yes.
And you're no strike pay now either, is
No.
it? Not a nickel.
We have a food bank, and that's helping out quite a bit to put
And
food
of course,
on.
being a breakaway union from CLC, Joe Morrissey's old crowd, you don't get any help from the BC Fed, do you?
There are individual unions in the BC Fed who have given us support.
But you're really on your own.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I'd like to know, well, I want to talk to Kelly. I'm a union too. I work for the Fishermen's Union.
Never mind that. Have you got a question for Kelly?
Yeah, okay. Are you guys going to be going back to work? Because
You're going to go back to work. What a stupid question.
Eventually, we'll be going back to work, I expect.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple of comments. One is that I support the bus drivers, and I think what they're doing is only standing up for what is basically a right. And the second thing is the government, I thought, was supposed to be staying out of the noses in business, and here they are putting it in places where I don't think it belongs. And thirdly, I think that since a bus driver's qualifications is to drive a bus, and they all have the same qualifications, then the only basis for getting a better position or a better route is through seniority. And if you buck that, then there's no excuse for any unions anywhere in this province or anywhere else.
Is there any threat to your seniority in the new agreement? No.
Well, in the new proposals, I think that there could very well be, but we can't identify.
That's because of the working
specifically.
Conditions Clause.
Yes.
And the January scheduling that you want to go back to?
Yes, but that's never been an issue that's been on the table. That's a position that the companies forced themselves into by refusing to continue the service. The action that we took by refusing to sign was not designed to shut down the transit system. It was the company's insistence that they impose the new schedules that resulted in the shutdown of the transit system.
Then you don't have a choice then.
But you wouldn't sign the new schedules.
That's right. We wouldn't sign the
So
new
then
schedules.
the not signing of the schedules is an integral part of the reason for the strike.
No, it is as far as the company's concerned, but that doesn't mean that the transit system couldn't continue to operate under the schedules that were in existence.
But that's where you're being arbitrary, arrogant, and short-sighted, if I may say so. The government has laid down a working condition, has laid down in effect and said, sign these schedules, and you said, no, we won't sign these
Yeah, but
schedules.
just a minute. We were perfectly entitled to take action that would promote the company to a point where they would at least negotiate a collective agreement,
Yeah.
and they never did, and they haven't until this day.
And it's one of your measures of pressure which up to now has failed.
Yes, it did fail as working on the company, but it did keep
But
the
you've
transit
been
system
telling
running.
you've been telling me all morning that the signing up is not a key factor. It seems to me that the signing up is a key factor.
It's not a key factor as far as we're
It is
concerned.
to the company.
Well, then talk to the company
But
about
there are
it.
two sides to the story.
Well, get them on here then.
I've had them on, and I tried to get them on this morning too, but you're giving the impression the signing up was not important. It was key to the company's position.
It was key to us to use that tactic because it meant that the transit system could keep going, and there was added pressure onto the company to
Well, I hate to
negotiate
get
an
back
agreement.
I hate to get back into it again, but one of the things the company wants is control of the sign-up schedules as they wish without consultation with you.
They have it when we're not in a legal strike position.
What's the point of
But you
having
used it
seniority
in
if
a
you
legal
can't-
strike position. You used it.
Yes,
You're
as an
not blaming
alternative to shutting the system down. We didn't want to shut the transit system down. Metro Transit and the government wanted the system to shut down. They used that as an excuse to shut the system down.
I'm trying
They were
to do
trying to
is-
turn around the public opinion that we had generated over the first 17
Yes.
weeks of our unstrike. They thought that after the transit system was shut down for 2 or 3 weeks, that the public opinion would turn
Now, all
against
I'm
us.
trying to do is to get the issues clear in my mind for the benefit of people. Money is okay, by and large. Part-time operators you can clear away. Signing up is not okay. That's part of the working conditions, and they want to take away your right to quibble about the signing up, don't they?
After we get a collective agreement,
Don't
there's
they?
no problem.
But if they don't put that in the agreement,
It's in the agreement, and it's not proposed to be changed by either party.
the signing up is not changing.
No, not changing.
Why don't you
Well,
ask?
that
Why
clear.
don't you ask the government why they haven't got the system running again? Haven't they saved enough money yet? Ask them how much money they've saved with the transit system down.
They're trying to beat you down and get a tough management rights contract and save money on you
All
and
at
put
the
in
same
part-time
time.
operators all at the same time.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You got to face that. You've got a social credit government in Victoria. You ain't seen nothing. Wait till Mulroney gets going. And this is the plan.
Yeah, but we're not the only ones being
And you're
attacked
the
by the government. The government is attacking the people who use the transit
But you're
system as well.
caught in the vice, and they're determined to bring you into line, and
Yes.
you can either go back to work or be legislated
And
back
all
to
the,
work.
all the more reason that we have to resist.
Yeah, but you can't confuse the public with all your esoteric semantics. They want to cut money available, they'll cut it. Right?
That's right.
That's right.
After the break.
You back to work.
Well, I got bad news for you now. Brand new bad news for you. Do you know where the government's thinking this morning? We've had the buses down for 3 months now, and so far we've survived very well, thank you. The PNE had a record year, an extra 100,000 people. Great success. People are getting to work. And why should the government even fund a system at its present level when we've shown we can do without it? Now, I'm just giving you some thinking. So why not take, this is ludicrous, but why not take part of that 80 million, it's about 80 million, isn't it?
Yes.
And provide taxis for seniors to get about. There'll be a full cabinet meeting tomorrow, and the options of the government are to do nothing and let it drag on, to call the House back, bring in a simple back-to-work bill on the present contract, which they won't do, or bring in legislated settlement based on the Norris report. That's what you're faced with right now.
The Norris report.
Morris
That's
report.
good.
Morris. Joe Morris. Used to call him nickel an hour Joe. When he settled for a nickel with the IW way back in the 40s. Nickel was a lot of money in those days. Well, go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yep.
This is for Colin Kelly. I want to know why he showed so much opposition when a group of people called Transpo 177 tried to put together just a temporary bus system in the interim of this problem.
Well, actually, the indication that we had from David Lewis, who was running that, was that it was not going to be a temporary system. That, in fact, they were proposing to continue that system even after the bus system, the regular bus system, got going again. Now we have, I mean, there's always been an indication to us that the government was proposing to privatize the bus system, and that Transpo 177 was in fact a so-called ploy to start that privatization theory going.
Well, I was a member of that organization, and I could have a sworn document that there was no such thing as far as Socred backing. In fact, it would have been, we might have liked to have seen a check from it, but we never saw one at all.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack. I love your show. I've been told that a driver can put in 2 hours work and get paid for a full 8-hour day. That the government wanted to put in a part-time driver to take that 2 hours, and that only seems fair to me. How
Yes.
can a man be paid 8 hours for 2-hour work?
Can a man get 8 hours pay for 2 hours work at certain overtime levels?
Not at overtime. A man could be paid 7.5 hours, not 8, 7.5 hours for 2 hours work. The number of times that has happened over the past 2 years, for example, is minuscule in comparison with the number of hours of overtime that have been worked, because the transit system has refused to hire any drivers in over 2.5 years.
In other words, on a certain callback provision, you get a full shift for your 2 hours.
Yes.
What's the normal minimum callback to get a full 7.5 hours pay?
The company has 3 times that they can assign you to a day's work, starting with the previous day, following your first piece of work, and then again at 1 o'clock roll call on the day to get you 7.5 hours work. And it's only
In other
rarely.
words, you're available for the 7.5, but you might only be called to do the 2.
Yes, but that's rare. That's
I
a rare
understand that.
circumstance.
Go ahead, please.
Good day, Jack.
Yep.
To the ICTU people, I'd just like to say that you're not the first union that the Victoria government has decided to get after, and there are a number of us out here who know what's going on. And I'd just like to say, hold the line there. You're doing extremely well, and I wish you well. And as far as this Victoria crowd is concerned, I can't wait for the next election.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
very
sir.
much.
Go ahead, please.
You're right to say that the people are unhappy with the government dealing with the subject, but it is only because government should have fired them all, start a private bus company, and as long as the government is operating buses, collecting garbage, or selling insurance, we are going to have a socialism and a chaos.
How can the government start a private bus company?
He's saying the moment you strike, you should be fired, and the market made open for any entrepreneur to drive buses with no brakes.
I'm sure.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Go on.
I don't think very much of your guests there this morning. They put many of old age pensioner caused them a lot of problem, which I am one. And I think that they are doing the people of this province a great
disservice.
Service, you know, by acting this way. They said that they were squeezed out of their jobs. They were locked out. That is far from the truth as possible.
Combination like unstrike, strike, and lockout. Now, let's get this quite clear. 10:30, they're now starting to vote in Victoria on your recommendation. There's no Vancouver 11 o'clock cultural hall, but you tell me that after talking to Joe Morris, that he has misunderstood some of your conditions here and is prepared to clarify them. Is that what you tell me?
Yes.
That's correct.
If other people talk to Joe, who spoke to Joe? You or
both of us talked to Joe last night. Now, the only way that we can renegotiate this mess now that Joe has created with these confusing parts in his report
is to meet again.
Is to meet again and to turn down his report as it now exists.
Colin Kelly, Gerry Krantz, ICTU, and I'll be back to work after the break. What time will we get the Victoria vote results?
Same time as the Vancouver.
What time is that?
I'd say around 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock?
Yeah.
Property counted out today, early this afternoon?
Yes.
There will not be a Webster program tomorrow morning, thanks to His Holiness the Pope, who takes our place tomorrow, and I think that's just wonderful. But we'll be back Thursday at 9 a.m. precisely.